Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. I am Pearl Phillip, and today we are joined by a guest who's no stranger to city government or to pushing for bold change in New York. Brand Lander, currently serving as New York City Comptroller, is stepping into the race for mayor with a sweeping vision to tackle housing, childcare, transit, public safety, and more. He's running on a promise to restore integrity to City Hall and deliver real solutions to the city's most urgent challenges. We'll dive into the details of his platform, his plan to fast-track affordable housing, and why he's taking a stand against certain rivals, even within his own party. And he's the only candidate that has something to lose if unsuccessful. Welcome, sir. Always a pleasure and honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Pearl. Great to be back on.
You're very welcome. So let's talk about your vision and leadership. If elected, what's the first big move you'd make within your first 100 days, and what would success look like by the end of your first year in office?
So on day one, I'm going to declare a housing emergency. I mean, everybody knows we already have a housing emergency if you're trying to find a place to rent, much less to imagine you could ever buy. But we're not recognizing it. We're not acting with urgency. So I'm going to declare a housing emergency through executive order. Set a plan to build 500,000 homes over the next 10 years. We're going to have a citizens' assembly. That's a group of people that get together and help shape that vision because everyone agrees there's a housing crisis. Everyone agrees we need more affordable housing. But then if you say, well, we'd like to build it in your neighborhood, people say, whoa, I don't trust that it's going to genuinely be affordable, or I don't know if I want it there. So we need a shared vision. That's what that Citizens Assembly is going to do. And we're going to get started on other things as well. Like we don't have to be a city where a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and the stoops of our buildings. So part of that housing emergency is going to be a concrete plan to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, and we can make a big dent in that in the very first year.
Excellent. So, with public trust in government at historic lows, how would you ensure your administration is truly responsive and accountable to the people, not just during the campaign, but every day you are in office?
This is so important. With trust in government just eroded, by all these crises we have, the housing crisis and the pandemic and public health, then made worse by Eric Adams betraying New Yorkers, and now made worse by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. But people just don't believe that government is working for them, including the Democrats, running places like New York City. So let me give you one example that I think shows how I'll do it. The comptroller, we audit every city agency. But for NYCHA, the public housing, I said, we need to involve the residents of NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, in deciding what to audit. And the auditors were like, well, we don't do that. We just decide what to audit. And I was like, no, we're going to create a NYCHA resident audit committee. And so we did. 25 NYCHA residents. They surveyed about 1,000 others, and they decided what to audit. And they said, Comptroller, we first would like you to audit the repair vendors, the contractors, who, come into our apartments to remove some mold or fix a leak or a new stove, whatever's broken. And they said, we're telling you half the time they don't do the work. Maybe they never show up. They make an appointment at an inconvenient time, and then they say, I wasn't there, even though I was, or they half do the job. It never gets done, but they still seem to get hired again. What gives? So we did an audit, and sure enough, 44% of the invoices we looked at had no backup documentation. So we don't know if that work was done. We just spent millions and millions of dollars, who knows on what, and residents are frustrated. So I bring them this audit, and they say, good job, thank you. This shows what we knew was the case. We're glad to have the numbers. Now, what are you going to do about it? Because we don't want you just to propose a new layer of bureaucracy on top of a broken bureaucracy. But then we came up with this great idea. On your phone, you can rate your Uber driver, or give a Yelp rating to a restaurant. So you should be able, the NYCHA tenant should have a Yelp for NYCHA repairs. And we mocked up that app. And when I'm mayor, after work is supposed to have been done in a NYCHA tenant's apartment, before we pay them, tenant's going to get a text or an email that gives them just a simple opportunity to rate that vendor 1 to 5. They showed up when they said, they were polite, they did a good job, yes or no. If they didn't do the work, then we're not going to pay them. Very quickly, we'll have vendor scorecards that come from NYCHA residents' experience, and we can keep hiring the contractors that did a good job and stop hiring the ones that were rude or disrespectful or didn't do the work. That will save taxpayer money, get the repairs that NYCHA residents deserve, and restore trust, because now residents see somebody cares. They designed something that makes my voice matter and makes my life better. And if we can do that step by step by step, I genuinely believe we will restore trust by fighting for people and actually delivering.
Excellent. So, in light of recent corruption scandals, you advocate for restoring honest, effective leadership to City Hall. Can you elaborate on your proposed public integrity plan and how it will enhance transparency and accountability within the administration?
Yeah. Somehow I think I'm the only candidate in the race with a public integrity plan, which is crazy given that everyone knows Eric Adams has run a corrupt administration and that Andrew Cuomo is also corrupt. What people want when I ask is honest government. And some of that is just, is electing an honest person. But then you have to have policies in place to prevent corruption. It's a big government. So step one is making the Conflicts of Interest Board actually independent. I was shocked to learn that the Conflicts of Interest Board, a majority of the appointees are appointed by the mayor.
There's the conflict already.
The conflict is right at the top. And so step one is make it so that the mayor can have a couple appointees, but it should be multiple appointees so no one controls that board.
There's balance.
Correct. Right now, sexual harassment charges against people that work for the mayor go up to the mayor, like City Hall but it should go to the Conflicts of Interest Board or an independent body so that there's real accountability. Before the city agrees to hire a lawyer to defend someone, like we did with Tim Pearson, someone independent of the mayor should have to sign off. I propose that be the New York City Comptroller. That won't be me in the next administration. And then last, I'm going to submit my main appointees, schools chancellor, police commissioner, planning commissioner, to the city council for advice and consent. The council proposed that, and Adams vetoed it. And I'm thinking, what are you afraid of? Appoint good professional people who aren't cronies, who aren't corrupt. Let the council ask them some questions. The mayor's still the boss. You're choosing who that person is, supervising them, and removing them if you're not happy. But that would give New Yorkers an ability to see, okay, good people are getting appointed. They can take some questions. We're getting in integrity and professionalism and honesty.
And you mentioned sexual harassment. There are a few candidates who are currently running who have had charges of sexual harassment.
With Andrew Cuomo, not only was he, found to have sexually harassed 13 women, both by the state attorney general, Tish James, and by the Biden Justice Department. More recently, former Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner, who wasn't one of those people, said he forcibly kissed her several times in an abusive way. And now, this is what's really appalling, now he has forced New Yorkers to spend $60 million in taxpayer money. He went to court and got an order. And, he said, look, I was governor when these accusations came. So New York has to pay for my legal defense. And there's no cap. We've spent $60 million, which is outrageous. And he had his lawyers issue subpoenas for the gynecology and therapy records of his accusers. Like, this is someone with an abusive personality who's willing to go to any lengths to harass and abuse people. He's just in it for himself.
So let's talk about equity and inclusion. New York is a city of immigrants. Given the current climate and the Trump administration's war on immigrants and the city's cooperation with ICE, now housed at Rikers Island, How would you, as mayor, protect and uplift immigrant communities across all 5 boroughs?
Yeah, this is so important. I mean, New York is the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known, and I feel it as a Jewish New Yorker. My people have been able to be safe in the city. Obviously, Caribbean New Yorkers, but from everywhere. And we have to fight to keep it that way. Unfortunately, somehow in every generation, people sort of look back over their shoulder and think, I'm going to shut the door behind me. But we have to make sure the city stays safe and welcoming to that next generation of people. And we're just seeing ICE abuse this on a daily basis. This poor, he's from Maryland, but he could have been a New Yorker. This poor guy, Abrego Garcia, El Salvadoran guy who they scooped up. They got the wrong guy, and now he's being tortured in a prison in El Salvador. Just yesterday, Mohsen Madawi. He's an interesting guy. He grew up in a refugee camp in the West Bank. He's Palestinian, grew up in a refugee camp in the West Bank. Despite that, he became a Buddhist, and though he fights hard for the rights of Palestinians, he's spoken out against anti-Semitism. He's been to many synagogues. He's a graduate student at Columbia, and ICE scooped him up yesterday at his citizenship interview. He thought he was going to get his citizenship interview, and now they've scooped him up and are trying to deport him. So New York has these very good sanctuary city laws, and they're thoughtfully designed. Look, if you have been convicted of a serious or violent offense, then okay, ICE and the city could collaborate, work together with ICE. But otherwise, ICE should not be in our schools or our public hospitals or our shelters. We need people to feel comfortable reporting domestic violence, reporting a crime if they see it, sending their kids to school. I'm hearing from families who are frightened to send their kids to school because they're worried about ICE in the school buildings. And instead of standing up for our laws, we have a mayor who is collaborating with Donald Trump and making it clear that he's willing to do their bidding. And that is terrifying immigrant New Yorkers. Let's just remember, in New York City, 40% of New Yorkers are foreign-born. 50% of New Yorkers live in mixed-status households with at least one person who was born out of the country, including 1 million children. And that's what we're talking about when they talk about these policies of family separation. They're not stopping at, with folks without documentation. They're coming at legal permanent residents. And if you can deport people just based on an op-ed they wrote, no one will be safe for very long.
Okay, so do you have any specific plans as the next mayor to protect immigrants?
Well, first I laid out how the city should be letting all city workers know if you work in a school, if you work in a public hospital, if you work in a homeless shelter, if you work in any of city facility, whether you're a city employee or a contractor, you have to know those rules and not let ICE in if they come, and then let people know they're going to be safe. One other important thing to do now, the city had set up previously an asylum seeker application help center to offer some help filling out asylum applications or applications for immigration status, and then especially to help people get work authorization so they could, get a job and move out of shelter. Now people are, I think, very anxious about coming to a government office. So we should go back to an older program we had called Action NYC, which took that money and gave it to community-based organizations like Mixteca or Make the Road or La Comena. There's so many good organizations all around the city that speak the right language and that have built trust, because that's where people are going to want to go to get advice on what they should do, what application they should file, if they could get work authorization. So going back to that Action NYC program that's funds the groups out in the neighborhoods is a better way at this time.
Okay. So in light of the Trump administration's effort to dismantle DEI programs within the federal government and beyond, how would your administration safeguard and promote the civil rights of all New Yorkers, ensuring that policies and programs continue to address systematic inequalities and uphold the values of diversity, equality, and inclusion?
Let me tell you what we've done in the Comptroller's office and then how I'll build on it as mayor. We did the first ever report on the racial wealth gap in New York. I did a report that found that the racial wealth gap here is 15 to 1. That's bigger than the country as a whole, where it's 9 to 1. And what that means is the median household worth of a white New York family is $277,000. That's enough to help send your kid to college or with a down payment or retire with some security or weather a health crisis. The median household net worth of a black family in New York is under $18,000. That's not enough to do any of those things. And that's what we're talking about when we say, we need to focus on equity and inclusion and diversity and the racial wealth gap. So what we've done in the Comptroller's office, the biggest resource we manage is the city's pension funds, $275 billion in investments. I'm proud to say that in my time in office, we have grown the assets being managed by Black and Latino and women investment managers by almost 40%, by $6 billion, from $17 billion to $23 billion. And those are many of our best managers. I mean, we are obligated to invest it in the way that's best for the teachers and firefighters and nurses whose money it is. So, of course, it's the right thing to do to not have it all be managed by firms owned by white men. But it also turns out to be a very wise decision because our Black and Latino and women managers have outperformed their benchmarks by 5%. And contributed last year to $1.8 billion in savings. So DEI is not only good for people of color, DEI is saving taxpayers money. It's good for all New Yorkers. Losing value because you exclude people from starting businesses, from buying homes, from getting access to education, from managing your money. It's just stupid. So I'm standing up strong for it and doing it now as controller, and I absolutely will as mayor. Our MWBE, the city, spends a lot of money every year, and still the vast majority of it goes to vendors that are owned by white men. And there's a lot we can do to diversify our spending. And I've laid out a bunch of plans for how we can do that. We could have billions of dollars more going to small businesses owned by minority and women-owned small businesses. And it doesn't matter what Trump does to DEI programs. This is New York taxpayer money spent through New York procurement policies. And one of the best things we can do to push back against his efforts to roll back civil rights is keep pushing to roll them forward.
I just need you to repeat for me that DEI is good for everybody.
DEI is good for everyone. And again, we have the backup to prove it in the work we do, the investment dollars, those managers. And, it really makes sense. There is talent everywhere. And if you choose not to find it, that's what you're doing. When you roll back DEI, you're saying, I don't want to find talent in more diverse places. Then you're going to have less talent and you're going to miss things that other people would have seen. DEI is good for everyone, and we are going to keep doing it in New York City.
Thank you so very much. So do you have a specific plan to address the needs and concerns of the Black and Brown, minority, and marginalized communities in New York?
I mean, let me speak directly on this to some of what I hear from Black New Yorkers, especially because Black New Yorkers tell me right now they really feel let down. I mean, they feel let down by Eric Adams, of course. There were hopes for him as second Black mayor, and people really feel betrayed, but also let down by New York City, the housing crisis and the impossibility of finding a place you could buy a home. Then you got deed theft and people are leaving the city because it's too expensive here. And I hear from people that it feels like Black New Yorkers have done more for New York City than New York City is doing for Black New Yorkers. And it just can't be like that. So even if you're a white guy like me running for mayor, you have to see that and say, I'm going to work with you to try to do something about it. So a few pieces of my plan for that. I mentioned homeownership a couple of times, but it's a big part of my housing plan. New York has half the homeownership rate of other places around the country. Twice as many of us are renters, and white New Yorkers are much more likely to own homes than Black New Yorkers. A generation ago, the city had that Mitchell-Lama program that said when we create affordable housing, let's make sure a good chunk of it is a first rung on the pathway to homeownership for working class families. And then we just stopped doing it. So almost all the affordable housing that gets built now is rental. So I have a plan. Let me ask you a question. How many city-owned municipal golf courses do you think there are in New York City?
I'm not sure, sir.
All right. There are 12. And I have a plan to take just 4 of them. There'll still be 8 golf courses for all the golfers out there. But if we take 4, we could build 50,000 new homes for New Yorkers to own and rent because the city owns the land already. So we can make, we don't have to pay for the land. And then like they did with Co-op City and Amalgamated Houses in Penn South in that Mitchell Lama program, build great new neighborhoods and offer co-ops to working class people with a focus on the Black homeownership rate and making homeownership possible again for people of color in this city. So that's one big part. I mentioned small business and MWBE programs to help give more access to capital and business startups. So those are the 2 anchors. It's also important to make sure there's summer employment and year-round employment opportunities available for our young people. Entrepreneurship pathways. I was just in a classroom in East Harlem where a 3rd grade class was doing Shark Tank, like an entrepreneur designing new products. And the kids were great. They came up to me. They're like, would you like to buy 20% of my company? So I thought that was great. And those are the kinds of things that we can be doing in our schools.
Great. So housing and homelessness. And you mentioned before, you're going to be declaring a public housing state of emergency, and you plan to construct 500,000 housing units. How do you plan to streamline the land use review process to accelerate housing development while addressing concerns about displacement and community impact?
So I mentioned that part of the housing emergency is to create this citizens assembly where people from across the city will come together to shape that plan. Because we have to ask some real questions. Okay, we need a lot more housing, but we want it to be at all incomes and more affordable with the focus on people who really need it. We want a mix of home ownership and rental. We want it to be in great neighborhoods and near transit. So that group of people is going to put a framework together for housing growth. And then when a plan comes, city planning can look at the proposal from a developer, from City Hall, and determine whether it matches the framework. And if it does, then it's going to be streamlined. And instead of going through the whole long ULURP process that could take 9 months or longer, we'll do it in just 3 months. There'll be an opportunity for comment, but instead of first at the community board and then with the borough president and then at the planning commission and then at the city council, have one public hearing. Every one of those people can come, listen, take their point of view. If they disagree that it's, advances the goals, they can say so and object, but it will move faster, and housing that meets the plan we've all set to address the housing emergency can get built faster and cheaper.
Okay. So your campaign emphasizes ending street homelessness for individuals with serious mental illness. What specific strategies do you propose to achieve this goal, and how will you ensure these initiatives are effectively implemented?
This is the number one pledge I'm making in my campaign, to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We do not have to be a city with a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleeping on the streets and the subways. Eric Adams' policy is just to sweep people from place to place. They do these homeless sweeps and they remove people from where they're sleeping, and they say you could go to shelter, but people have had bad experiences in shelter, so they don't go. And no one got connected to housing out of the 3,000 people that they swept over the last year or so. They just cycle from subway to street to housing to jail and right back again. Meanwhile, other cities are using this model called housing first. So instead of saying to someone, we're going to take you to shelter, and they say, I don't want to go to shelter, you offer them a supportive housing apartment, single room occupancy, but a room with a lock and a roof like a human being has. And most of the times people take it. You have services so they can take their medication, stay on their treatment plan. And in places like Salt Lake City and Denver and Houston, they're seeing that it works to keep people stably housed 70 to 90% of the time. I mean, it doesn't work all the time, but it works the vast majority of the time. And We're talking about around 2,000 people who are mentally ill and sleeping on the streets. Meanwhile, there's 2,500 vacant supportive housing units, but the Adams administration won't make people eligible for them because they want them to go to shelter first. So you need a coordinated continuum of care. You need a mayor who's really looking. And I've been out. I went out with the subway co-response outreach teams. I went out with the intensive mobile treatment provider. I went to Fountain House to see their clubhouse model. I've been in the mental health courts. Mayoral coordination and leadership, a real continuum of care, and that housing first model. Now, sometimes when a person is really a danger to themselves or others, you need to be able to take them to the hospital. And of course, sometimes you have to have like a mental health court if someone commits a crime, but that housing first model will work 70 to 90% of the time, and it'll add up to ending street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, and that'll make our city safer for everyone. Amazing. That's why I really don't understand. Why they did a pilot here, actually, Volunteers of America, with 100 people, and 84% of them are still in the units. And I proposed just scale that up. And for some reason, the Adams administration attacked me for saying scale it up, like it's too complicated. I'm like, you did this, take the credit. But we'll do it when I'm mayor.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. So let's look at support for families and public services. Your agenda includes providing universal childcare and after-school programs for working families. How will you fund these programs, and what steps will you take to ensure they meet the diverse needs of families across the city?
So one of the best things in New York in the last decade was the universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. And that required going to Albany and getting more money from the state to pay for that universal pre-K. And what a difference it makes for families. I mean, childcare costs an average of about $25,000 a year. So it's crushing a young family, just at the time, you might have a younger kid too. So somebody else is staying home. You only have one instead of two incomes. Your housing costs are going up because your family's growing. The difference in not having to pay that $25,000 and knowing your kid is socializing with others and learning to read, amazing. So I support growing it, which de Blasio started, and Adams said he was going to get done to 3-year-olds, to 3K. Unfortunately, they're thousands of seats short. So in my first year, I'm going to deliver on the problem of the promise of 3K. Now, to go further and give 2-year-olds childcare, we're going to need help from the state because it is expensive, and the state is the place where more revenue can be raised. So there's a great campaign called New Yorkers United for Childcare that is fighting for a statewide effort for Albany to put the money in to find the revenues from progressive taxation to pay for universal childcare for 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds all across the state. And that'll help us actually be able to implement it. You're right, that has to be done with an eye to people's diverse needs, especially for 2-year-olds. A lot of our babies are in family daycare centers. They don't go to a center or a school. They've got, generally a woman, but, a person who opens up their home and has a few kids in it. That's the model a lot of people are using. So we're going to have to make sure that model, we can pay those people with the vouchers or the funding. Of course, we'll want to make sure it's safe and nourishing, but people are showing they can do that in those family-based childcare programs, as well as some centers that really, and some people will want it near their home, some people will want it near their work, some people will care more about a program, that speaks the language they speak. So you need to make sure it's diverse and inclusive, but you can do that with the network of providers.
Okay, and let's talk about public safety and transportation. And public safety is very high for New Yorkers. Addressing public safety, you propose increasing NYPD ranks to the budgeted 35,051 officers. What led to this decision, and how do you reconcile this approach with your previous advocacy for reducing police budgets?
I think progressives, and I definitely include myself here, were slow to reckon with the rising sense of disorder through the pandemic. The pandemic just disrupted some things in our life together, elevated mental illness, elevated crime, made people just, less in kind of stable social order. And by not responding to it more quickly, we have both social and political problems coming out of it. So that's why I'm emphasizing ending street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. I mean, that's a housing plan more than it's a policing plan, but it's a great way of making our city safer by not having mentally ill people sleeping on the streets. For the NYPD, the budgeted headcount is 35,000, but because there's a staffing crisis there, we're about 1,500 officers short of that, about 33,500 today. And it's about to get worse because in 2005 was a big year for hiring. So about 4,000 officers started that year. They're going to hit their 20th year this year. And by January 1st, when I take office as the next mayor, we could be down 3,000 cops below the budgeted headcount. So I want to get us back up to that budgeted headcount. 2 programs I have to do that. One is to expand this NYPD cadet program, which people might not know about, is a great program. Right now, that program, if you already have some college credit, if you have 45 hours of credits, the NYPD cadet program will pay for you to get your BA and then join the force. But we could expand that program to kids coming out of high school, even if they don't have college credits yet, and say, we'll pay for you. If you join this program, you become an NYPD cadet, you start working with the department, go to college, we'll pay for your credits to get your associate's degree. Then you can take the exam and join the force. And if you want to then keep going for your BA, we'll keep paying for it, because data has really shown you get better officers if they're both getting experience on the job, but also going to school and learning, and so that's a good model for expanding recruitment. I also want for all city workers, not just cops, but all municipal employees, I have this program called Homes for City Workers, which would take pension fund money, that is the pensions for those folks, and invest it to enable people to double the value of the home they could afford. So let's say a teacher or an officer could afford a $400,000 mortgage, but they can't find a $400,000 home. We take pension fund money, invest it alongside. Now they can buy an $800,000 home. And when they go to sell, they'll get half the proceeds and the pension funds get half the proceeds. So you don't need subsidy. But you can help empower the next generation of city worker homeowners. And I think that'd be attractive and keep people on the job.
Okay. And that's part of the American dream, home ownership.
Exactly.
Your transportation plan includes investing in public transit, expanding bus services, and implementing congestion pricing. How will you balance the need for improved transit infrastructure with concerns about equitable access and affordability for all New Yorkers?
Yeah. One thing that I think is exciting here would be to really build on this what's called bus rapid transit. Here we call it SBS, or select bus service. Those are bus lines that are really set up. It's like to move more quickly. You have a dedicated bus lane. The lights are timed so they move quickly. People board at all the doors so you get on and off quickly. But we only have them in the boroughs. So there's one that runs on Nostrand Ave, Nostrand, and I think it goes the other way on Franklin. But it doesn't, and it ends at the Williamsburg Bridge. It should go over the bridge and connect you to the 1st and 2nd Avenue line in Manhattan. So, and if you use that, it's great to build out new transit lines. And I'm excited about the Interborough Express that'll run through southern Brooklyn and Queens. But that's expensive and takes a long time. If we scale up bus rapid transit, there were 30 lines originally imagined, but only half of them have been implemented. So I'm going to get the other half done and connect the boroughs. There's another route in the Bronx that could connect to the east side of Manhattan. We can actually expand rapid transit options for working class families in the outer boroughs really quickly through that approach.
Okay. And politics and civic engagement. The race includes multiple candidates with diverse views. And Andrew Cuomo, which you've spoken about earlier, is the most polarized candidate in the Democratic primary. If he secures the Democratic nomination, you have said that you're not going to support him in the general election. Is there any other candidate you would support? And how do you plan to differentiate your vision for the city's future?
So, obviously, I'm very focused right now on winning the Democratic primary. So I will be the Democrat in the general election in November. The two candidates that I have said people should not rank are Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo. Eric Adams is now not running in the Democratic primary. And Andrew Cuomo is. And look, he's leading in the polls. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I just think this is a corrupt and abusive person who has all that sexual harassment, who sent seniors to their deaths in nursing homes during COVID, and then lied about it. I mean, look, it might have just been a tragic mistake at the beginning, but then because he had his $5 million book deal, he covered up the death count, actually edited the Department of Health report himself to cover it up. We know enough to know that this is an abusive personality that's just in it for himself and not New Yorkers. So, I'm counting on New Yorkers to take a clear-eyed look at him and think, okay, if I want honest and effective leadership, where can I get it? It is ranked choice voting. But yes, I'm asking for people to rank Brad Lander number 1. You can then rank some other people 2 through 5. Don't rank Andrew Cuomo anywhere. And we can then deliver a safer, more affordable, and better run New York City.
Okay, and speaking about ranked choice voting has been a game changer for New York City elections. How do you see ranked choice voting shaping the mayoral race, and what are your thoughts on its impact on voter turnout and the overall democratic process?
The Working Families Party has, put forward a slate right now of 4 candidates: me, Adrian Adams, Speaker of the City Council, Zohran Mamdani, an Assembly member, and Zelnor Myrie, a state senator, and said, rank these 4 candidates and don't rank Andrew Cuomo. And, I think that's a good model for how to engage in ranked choice voting. They've said that in May, they're going to make a number 1 ranking to encourage people. Okay, this is the person we think that has the best chance to win. And obviously, I hope to be that candidate. What New Yorkers have to do now is learn a little more about multiple candidates, because once you get to, okay, that's the person I like best, that's good. But you also want to have some other candidates on your ballot that you might not like as much as your first choice, but you think, okay, I'd rather have that person than Andrew Cuomo, so let me rank, 2, 3, 4, or 5 candidates.
All right. And Mr. Lander, for New Yorkers who are excited by your message and want to get involved, what's the best way for them to support your campaign, learn more about your platform, volunteer, or donate?
Thank you, Pearl. Folks should go to landerfornyc.com. That's LANDERFOR NYC, Lander for NYC with the 4 spelled out, FOR.com. And there you can see every one of these policies. We have the most detailed policy platforms. We just are putting out a climate policy today. Let's see, the Black maternal health policies coming out very soon. There's a lot of detailed policies, and you could read more about all the ones we've talked about: my housing plan, my plan to end street homelessness, childcare, public integrity, NYCHA. I think I have the only public housing plan in the race. You can donate, and your contributions, if you're a New York City resident, get matched 8-1 through our campaign finance matching system. So that's a great opportunity. And yes, the main thing from now to June 24th is volunteers. And look, what volunteers are doing is just helping spread the word. You say, I heard this guy. You might not know him yet. No one really knows who the comptroller is. I know you heard of Andrew Cuomo, but I don't think you want him to be the mayor. Let's have somebody who just is honest, who knows how to make government work for working people, and will focus on the problems we're really facing of cost of living and safety and good schools and the challenges our city faces. So go to landerfornyc.com, sign up to volunteer, donate, spread the word to your neighbors. This is always a lot of fun to come and talk to you. You have good questions and great listeners. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I have to say, one of the most fun things about running, I'm really enjoying campaigning because New Yorkers are amazing and so diverse. And they got some things they all feel like the rent is too damn high, and some things that are very particular to, their community. It's, although even there, it's funny, I guess the last church I was in and the last mosque I was in, they both were like, Controller, parking is a really big problem. So there's, differences and similarities, and it's great to get to talk to people. So I'm grateful to folks like you who build an audience with community. That's what makes New York the incredible city it is, and we can lead it well into the future.
Thank you so very much. So, folks, that was Brad Lander, candidate for mayor of New York City, sharing his plans for a more just, affordable, and accountable city. Whether you agree with his platform or have questions of your own, one thing's clear. This election will help define the future of New York City. You can learn more about his campaign at landerfornyc.com. That's Lander, FORNYC.com. And as always, we encourage our listeners to stay informed, stay involved, and most importantly, get out and vote. Thanks for tuning in to People, Power, and Politics. Until next time, I am Pearl Phillip. Be well, New York.
People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.